Hello everyone. Thank you again for joining us in this session of the Hiring Revolution. My name is Isca Gonzalez, and I'm very happy today because we're going to talk about talent acquisition. As you know, I've been dedicating all this month to talk about talent acquisition, best practices, international recruiting, artificial intelligence, and their use in talent acquisition. And today it's a very special moment because, first of all, I have a very special guest. I work with her and I know how amazing she is. And it's going to be a nice conversation. This is a safe space where we can share best practices. As you know, I know there's so many bad things all over the place, but here we talk about how can we do things right. So today we are going to talk about talent acquisition, analytics, data, my friends. And I'm going to welcome Kasha so she can introduce herself and we can use this time. Of course, if you have questions, comments, please feel free to share in the chat. Let us know what city you're joining from and enjoy the conversation. So, welcome, Kasha.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Iska.
How are
I'm
you?
happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy too. Thank you so much for your time. She is joining us from Poland, and now we have already Jorge Gonzalez. Hola, he is in Buenos Aires. Please let us know the city you're joining. Hola, Hector. Hector is in Mexico, but I forgot the city. Please let us know what city you're in. And in the meantime, Kasha, please introduce yourself so people can know who you are, and then we will start with this amazing topic that we chose for today.
Sure. Thank you, Iska, once again for this invitation and this opportunity to talk to you again. We crossed paths at one of the automotive industry companies. It was a while ago, so I'm super happy to actually be here with you again and have this opportunity to discuss the talent acquisition analytics. So a little bit on my background. I worked across various industries. One of it is automotive, and that's the most recent industry that I worked in. But I'm also having an experience in other industries like insurance or big pharma. And I've worked both in the agency and in-house recruitment. And my experience is not only limited to the recruitment because I work also in other HR areas like employer branding, corporate social responsibility, or employee relation and communications. And I used to work, I think, all my professional career for those international corporations. So I think I'm bringing quite a broad perspective on the talent market, especially the EMEA talent market. And I would say that my focus is divided between operational recruiting, but also building the strategies and teams. And the area that fascinates me the most, and I'm truly passionate about, is actually how we can use the data and analytics to optimize the recruitment processes. So, therefore, I think it's great that we have this conversation today around this topic.
It is, and also because you mentioned something important. This is about international recruiting. As we know, I'm from originally from Mexico City. I work in the United States. You are in Europe at this time. For you, is 4 p.m. For me, it's 10 a.m. This is exactly how it happens in real companies. Like we are talking about specifically talent acquisition, and it doesn't matter the city where you're based. You might have to work if you are in an international company. You might have to deal with people all over the world. And at some point, we need to use data. I think, and we can start with this conversation per se. Data in talent acquisition is not something very common yet. We know since more than 10 years ago that we need to present data to be, I would say, like taking seriously in the company. All the areas, finance, quality, production, even human resources with the very basic KPIs they have, present data. But talent acquisition still kind of hard sometimes to measure and to keep track of all the, I would say, usable data or something that is impactful in the company. What is your perspective in terms of data? Like, what is the important data that we can track in talent acquisition?
Well, there is a lot of important data that we can track. I think we can, first of all, identify some areas of improvement, especially across the recruitment process. And we can also provide to stakeholders some valuable insights of the market, of the candidates. And this can lead to some more strategic actions with them. So I think that the talent acquisition, obviously, we can have some basic metrics of how the process is conducted, how many candidates we are getting into the process, getting through the funnel, how many offers we are giving to the candidates, and how many of them are accepted. But we can also use data, in my opinion, during the process, the hiring process, the recruitment process.
Mm-hmm. And I think just for the people who's joining, some of the most common metrics or KPIs that talent acquisition have is typically time to fill, is the time from the moment you open a requisition, an open role, until the time the candidate accept the offer. There's like some questions depending on the
Differences.
company. Some companies measure the moment of the offer acceptance, and some other companies measure that time to fill until the moment of the candidate actually starts in the company. But in that case, some companies measure that as time to hire, and that's when it starts like the complexity of the metrics. And that's what I'm saying. I always share here in the show that talent acquisition is a team effort, and that when we talk about recruitment and selection, it's a real challenge, and it can be frustrating because we work with people and people change their mind. But it's also beautiful and it's amazing because we work with people, and it's great to deal, in this case, with different cultures and different types of perspective. So that's one: time to fill, time to hire. And if we are like very, very specific, some companies also measure time to present candidates. So it's the time from the moment of the recruiter has an intake session or a kickoff call to understand the profile that they are looking for, until the time they present the first pool of candidates for the hiring manager. And from there we can move into many, many other type of measurements. There are some tough, I would say, like quality of hire. In some
Indeed.
companies, it's also related. Talent acquisition is considered part of the turnover. How long are the candidates or the new hires staying in the company, and then how they grow in the company. It's a lot, as I said, of different measurements, different KPIs. Each company define their own recruiting process. So the importance here, and I think what something that we can highlight is, as you said, this data is critical to negotiate and to help the companies from the talent acquisition perspective. So I hear here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, what I can add as well is like we have also the metrics related to the cost. We can
Mhm.
calculate how much it costs to hire a person, to recruit a person. So this is, I think, from the business perspective, that's a very important metric to introduce. And for the recruiters itself, if you want to measure the recruitment process, what is important is to know what are the conversion rates. So how many people are actually getting into our pipeline, how many candidates can we attract with the offer, how many candidates we are putting through the different stages of the recruitment process.
Mm-hmm. And I think something that I always like to share as well, because this is, I think sometimes people is like wondering, is it really different, the recruiting process in Europe, in Asia, in the United States and Latin America? Friends, and please, Kasia, I would like to hear your perspective. Is it really different, or you think we have all the same process?
I believe we do have the same process. We are living in a global village, so it is very much of the same process. There might be some local differences, but not to the process itself. It maybe there will be the differences how you conduct the recruitment process, but those metrics are quite universal, and you can use it with different companies across different industries and across different job functions.
Yeah, and I
So I
think
think
that
there is something that we can share. It's not dividing us.
yeah, I think it's the beauty of recruiting. It's like really, here's where you can apply transferable skills, and you can, as you said, move from industry to industry. Something that I'm highlighting here is reactive recruiting. I've seen so many cases where the companies are so focused on speed and to, like, gain projects, because that's how it is
Mhm.
today. Everything is about speed. Unfortunately, this impacts in recruiting, and it starts to be more reactive. So when we're talking about data, something that I think it's useful is to help companies predict how their processes are going to be, because if everything keeps being reactive, or most, of course, there's companies where you can find amazing planning, and they use reverse planning, and you have amazing processes, everything structured, everything works like a machine. But in others, and sometimes it's the majority of them, still this reactive situation where you know today that someone is leaving, you have to do a replacement, you get a new project, and that's when you start the recruiting. In this case, how do you see data to help predicting how a process can be, and help from this moment to the company to start making decisions?
I think it's very important what you said, that a lot of companies are working with on like reactive basis, while actually just recruiting. But I think we work in the talent acquisition, and the talent acquisition is a little bit more than just a recruitment process, because in talent acquisition we actually should forecast what's happening with our workforce, right? We should be really close to the business decision makers, and then work with them to see what kind of workforce, what kind of skills are we actually planning to have in the organization in the short term, in the long term. And that's how the data is being used here. So we can plan the strategies, we can create the strategies, and focus then on attracting very specific talent on a long-term basis.
Yeah, because the challenge, I think yesterday I was talking um in a show also about nearshoring, and like now how the complexity for talent attraction is the same globally. The candidates are in a moment where they can decide if they stay in a process, if they reject an offer. It's even more common nowadays. So all this data can help to predict not only how the company can make decisions, but also how the market is moving today. And I would like to share with you, there's here some comments. Here's Javier Rodriguez. He says, I like measuring time to clear to manage vendor performance for those completing our background checks and relocation services if applicable, of course, because Kasia mentioned something very important. Talent acquisition is not just about finding the candidates or presenting a resume. This is a critical area for the business where we have to deal with vendors, with hiring managers, with different areas of the company. And of course, this, when you are using a vendor that it's impacting your time to sign an offer or to hire the person, of course, you need to know how is the, not just the cost but the time. And then it says, Javier says, process should be consistent. How it's applied in country might be different. Allow for flexibility at a global level. Great response, Kasha. Thank you, Javier. I totally agree. It's like we have to think globally but act locally. So now let's move to um, I think this is really a topic that I like, data driven recruiting. And it's this is as I shared when I created the session, is the power of negotiation. I think sometimes, and because most of our audience is on LinkedIn, there's like this global perspective, like everything is responsibility of recruiting, because we know it's a tough market. So for candidates, sometimes it's very complicated to move forward during the recruiting process, and they don't hear about the company. They keep hearing that perhaps the position is, like the process is delaying, that their interviews are changing. They don't receive feedback. This is normal. Unfortunately, so far I haven't heard of a lot of companies that have this process perfect, because, as I said, if we're working with people, agendas might change. But something that I think it's important for us to share, if you agree, is like, how is, from our side, from recruiting, when we have data and we are seeing that the market is complex, how can we help the managers to understand, and if needed, move faster in order to make a hiring decision? So I don't know if here you want to share an example, or like elaborate a little bit more in this case.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think we have to remember that as a recruiters, our primary job is actually to find the best talent, the best person. We should also educate our managers on the realities of the market, right? And we should consult them. So this is very important, that having the data, we are coming from this recruiter that delivers the CVs, the resumes, to a person that is actually a consultant, the person that a manager can trust, a person that the manager can rely on, right? We are becoming more credible. And if we're thinking about the hiring managers, where the one thing to, if we want to influence their decision making, is either we have a very persuasive abilities, right? We have those superpowers, or we have a very good relationship with them, or I believe it's with data, right? So you go there with the qualitative data or the quantitative data, or both, and then you use them during the intake session, the very first meeting that you have with the hiring manager. You can already present what you know on the market, on the candidates. You should use the data during the search, on the offer stage, on the onboarding the candidates. So data overall will help us improve the process and the candidate experience. And for one example, what can data actually do for the recruiters and for the hiring managers is the data, all the talent insights will help us to increase the candidate pool. First of all, we can, with some historic data, we can identify the best sources for the roles on the given market, and I've seen it in the companies, depending on the job and on the market, on the location. With the help of the data, with the historic data, we were able to see what are the best sources for the candidates. So either it's the internal talent pool, because we see that there are internal talent pool that is ready to take the job, or the referrals. Sometimes we don't even have to post the job on the additional job boards, on the paid job boards. We don't have to do a very thorough research on the passive candidates, because we see that in the data, the most successful hires were from within the organization or were from the referrals. So we would be basing our recruitment efforts on having those two talent pools. The other thing related a bit on the, that the data can increase the candidate pool is, I remember that we had this process within the engineering area, within the R&D engineering, and the company actually had a very specific title for one job. It was company specific. So here, what recruiter could do, and what actually recruiter did, is they show the hiring manager how this specific title is limiting our talent pool. So they were, with some skill-based research, they actually shown that if we change the title of the job, we are able to reach out to a much broader community. We are able to, as a recruiters, to attract these people. And then we have, the open door, and we can use our persuasive techniques and tactics to get the candidates in the pool. And I think, and I believe that managers, we can negotiate with them. We can show them if we have something tangible. And for me, data is something that we can rely on. We can, with data, persuade and negotiate with the hiring managers.
Mm-hmm.
They are much more open to change their mind.
Yeah, and I think you share so many things that each of the things you share, we can have like a specific show about it. But I think it's important to mention a few things. One, and this goes to all the recruiters out there, we need to be sure that we are collecting data. And I think sometimes one of the excuses, because it's an excuse, is that, well, we don't have a system. And this is great, because I know there's like so many people saying out there like, wow, the ATS does everything for you. No, my dear friends, the ATS is not like a magical solution. In order for us to have data, we have to put that information into something. Like the same way in the business, a lot of people work with Power BI. We could have Power BI, but then you have to pull that data from somewhere. So there's still so many companies that are tracking manually the data from each process, but all this goes to, don't be afraid to collect your data, to track how your processes are going, because you are the owner of your processes. And I think that's, if you want, perhaps so many companies are not training recruiters in this sense. So many people, I shared this before, it's like just going through recruiting because they want to move to human resources, and it's understandable. But if you are there today, talent acquisition is critical because it's moving so fast and you need this information. So first, please don't be afraid to use data, track your data, and then the insights. Since we are with this LinkedIn audience, I love talent insights. I think it's a great resource, like all the economics and demographics that LinkedIn has. Perhaps you can find something in similar job boards, but with LinkedIn, honestly, is great. More than 900 million users, and you can see the profile that people created, where are they based, what are the skills they have. And something that I think it's great that you share as well is sometimes only changing the job title or something in particular in the job description or the job post makes a huge difference. From the side of the candidate, sometimes they are like, I saw this position 2 weeks ago and now seems to be the same, but they change just a little bit. Well, that's what we do. Like, it's also in recruiting, we have to apply A/B testing, and it's part of using data. So here, there's a very interesting question from Isaac Guajardo. He's in Mexico City, and he says, can you predict when people are leaving one company? What do you think, Kasha? I have my answer, but I want to hear yours first.
My answer would be yes, you can predict, but I'm not sure how accurate we will be in our predictions. It depends what we measure and what we have, what kind of data we have with the employees. But if there are hiring managers and managers in general that are working closely with their people, with the employees, with teams, and they have a strong business partnering from the HR department, I think there is a certain degree to predict when the people will leave and what would be the reason for leaving, right?
Yeah, I think one in
What's
this
your view?
case, yeah, in this case, Isaac, I would like to know if you're from human resources or you are like from the operational side of the business. Please let me know in the comments. But yeah, you can. One of the things you can use from data is the performance reviews, and you also have in human resources, typically, if the company has a succession planning strategy, there's something that still so many companies are using, and it's called 9box. So it's where you put the talent depending on certain levels of the organization. Isaac is telling us he's an engineer. So if you are part of this type of company that typically has at least two performance evaluations during the year, your manager and yourself are going to rate your performance. So you're going to say, like, okay, I'm performing according to what is expected for my role, or I'm over what is expected, I'm overachieving, or perhaps someone is underperforming. So that's one of the typical data that you can use as human resources, sorry, to predict if someone is going either to leave, or if as a company you might need to make the decision to let that person go, because you have someone that is consistently underperforming, then it might be necessary to take some actions. Like, typically there's like a performance improvement plan that a lot of people is afraid of it, but it's not wrong. It's something great, because what you want is people to be better. Unfortunately, if for some reason this not is not working, then yeah, the person ends leaving the position. So performance review can be one. And if you don't have this type of information or this type of structure, as Kasia said, it has to do with communication. You don't really need to have like fancy systems or reviews. If you are close to your people and you see that they are not comfortable, they are starting to take a lot of days off, they are arriving late, maybe there's something that is not working there. So there is one thing is, if you decide not to see those signs, but they're there. So I think definitely you can predict when someone is leaving. And see, like, someone is also saying hi from Guanajuato. Now, I think we're almost finishing the session, but in this case, in terms of data, I would like to talk a little bit more about artificial intelligence, and I would say in terms, in general, automation and the use of technology for talent acquisition. What is your perspective in this case? Kasha, also coming, and I think since most of our audience tend to be from Latin America, there's still like a little gap in how we are using
Okay.
the artificial intelligence versus North America or even Europe. What is your perspective in this case? Like relating artificial intelligence technology and data for talent acquisition.
Well, I'm a big fan of the artificial intelligence and especially those tools of the generative artificial intelligence that are open for public. So ChatGPT is my friend, is my co-pilot in many, many situations. And I believe that the recruiters could also use the AI to help them with some very repetitive tasks that they have on their job or with administrative tasks. And from more strategic point of view, it can be a person or someone that you can talk through your ideas. You can like bounce off your ideas with, and then as well it can help you with all kind of analytics, because it can deal with a lot of sorts of data and show you some trends that maybe you yourself you are not seeing. And seeing on the LinkedIn how fast they're adopting the different AI capabilities, I think that will be the real future.
Yeah, and I love it. Actually, a few weeks ago, there was the Global Talent Acquisition Day, and this association in the United States was they had like this live event all day. There were some people talking about artificial intelligence and not just ChatGPT, because there's a lot of assistance, but of course ChatGPT I think is one of the closest ones that we can use, and it helps with so many things. So again, here if you are like from human resources, or like Isaac that joined us that it's an engineer, I always say like don't be afraid. It's better to embrace artificial intelligence, and at the end of the day we all need to use data. It's amazing how can you can ask this assistant to help you creating like an Excel spreadsheet. Like they can present the information already. It's time that you could spend there, and it's like a repetitive administrative task that you can delegate and then use that valuable time to be with the business. So I think this is last week I was we were talking with the CEO of MetaView, and I was asking also his perspective. He was sharing that during his conversations with different people in the talent acquisition industry, they are predicting that now with all this artificial intelligence, instead of disappear, our function as recruiter or talent acquisition consultants is going to, like go back to the moment when it's all about the relationship, when it's all about this
Exactly.
influence that we have to that we need to have as consultants with the company. So in this case, before we close the session, Kasha, I would like to hear from you. How do you see this integration from your background, no, like human resources, talent acquisition, being strategic? How is this going to change in terms of talent acquisition? I will say now for the present, not just the future, but what is your perspective?
I think having it all, it will be only becoming easier, either for me or for other recruiters. This is really the moment where the technology can help us and take some really the stuff that is our burden on the job. And maybe for some people, it also will give them some new perspectives. They can learn new skills and then make themselves less obsolete to the talent, to the artificial intelligence, right? I think you're on mute, Iska.
This happens every
Happens.
time. Thank you, Kasha. But yeah, I was saying like this is a time that we have to use to embrace technology, to use it to be more productive, and to go back and have this positive relationship negotiation with the business. We don't have to be afraid of using it. If anything, we have to start using it more. So thank you.
It's only an artificial intelligence. It will not have the empathy of the human.
Exactly, and it's not replacing us, it's
No.
helping us to improve. So thank you so much for your time, Kasha. We really, really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
this conversation. I'm sure that some people is going to see this on demand, the replay, not just on LinkedIn, but we will also have it available on Facebook and YouTube. Please open your mind, start being the talent acquisition consultants that we need Remember always that talent acquisition is a team effort, and embrace artificial intelligence because it's the present and the future of international recruiting. Thank you so much for your time, Kasha. Please don't go, wait for me. And we're going to see each other soon, my friends. Have a wonderful day. Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.